Welcome and thank you everyone for joining us for another Twitter Space. Today is August 8th, 2022, and this is episode 20 of the ledgerscale Internet of Value Open Forum. Now, ledgerscale Foundation was founded with two goals in mind. One, we want to provide educational services to not only our community, but to the entire digital asset community, and help scale up the number of brains that understand how distributed ledger technology works. And two, we intend to one day run hardware to provide infrastructural support to the distributed ledger technology networks that we believe are ESG friendly and running a form of decentralized consensus. We host these spaces Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday starting at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. And on Wednesday, we host a focus topic space from 5 to 6 Eastern Standard Time. Now, if I could just ask if everybody could follow us at ledgerscale on Twitter and turn notifications on so you know when we're going live, and as well as retweet the space so that not only yourself but hopefully other people who listen to this conversation can find it valuable in the future.
Yeah, and I appreciate everybody joining. I mean, we're here to engage the community. So if you have a question or something, please raise your hand. Feel free to speak up. If you're curious about something, I guarantee you somebody else is, if not multiple other folks. And, try to run it as an open forum. As long as you speak up and you're cordial and everything, then that's good. And welcome to the space.
Man, it's so much more difficult to retweet spaces. But was anybody else in this space earlier with us other than me and Tony? I don't know if I saw you in there, X. Were you in this space earlier with us, X?
Yeah, but I don't know, it was cutting. I was having some internet connections. I heard a little bit of what Matt Hamilton had to say. That was it. I got cut out.
No, that's interesting. Karma was having the same problem. And at one point I did too, but it was only for a minute or two.
That was interesting.
I only had that problem with that space because I joined other spaces and everything was fine.
I think it
Just
was it was like 2000 something, so I think maybe that was the issue. But yeah,
maybe depending on where the host location was.
Probably.
Well, Mario kept saying there was a point where he said that he was trying to get up more people to speak, but he couldn't. It wouldn't let him. I don't know, but he had. I mean, there was, like I was telling you, that he had room constantly for about 2 to 3 more speakers at any given point. And yeah, I don't know.
Well, there is a limit to the number of people that can come up. So, like, sometimes we have to bump people down so we can let other people up. But I think the limits, the more hosts you have, which there's a max on that, I think of 3. But the more hosts you have, the more speakers you can have. But even then, you still can't have more than, 10, 12, 15, basically like somewhere around a dozen. So if you want to let up new people, you got to bump down other people. That's just how it works, I guess. I don't know. I think they were booting me, which is fine. It was interesting, actually, to see how the interface handled that. Because I've never really seen things from that user experience perspective or user interface perspective.
I'll tell you, for having that many people in the space, it really wasn't handled the best.
Yeah, I was extremely disappointed in the way because they were asking really good, legitimate questions, but then they would just interrupt speakers trying to answer the questions just to sort of defend or attack one little thing versus listening to the whole thing and then rebuttaling.
I saw that crypto mandarin guy in there. That's it.
Yeah, the last space call they had over 1,000 people, and it was connection issues there. I had to go onto the web, Twitter. That was the only way it would work, is through the browser. But yeah.
Come on, maybe next time try that.
I was about to say I did. I tried from different accounts. I tried with the emulator on the desktop. I tried with the phone. They had to just be booting me or something. I mean, because I did other chats. These were more like macroeconomic type conversation. Perfectly fine.
Yeah, that's probably true. As soon as I was hopping in, it was like I would be there like a minute, then the screen would go like white, like blurry, and then connection issues, and I'm out.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, if you've been around this space long enough, you grow numb to these kind of things. I mean, it's what it is, right? I mean, welcome to having freedom of speech. You know, you can say what you want to, and that's fine. That's good, actually. Even if, you know,
It was just, I understand that, but I mean, if you're David just had a space right after it, and one of the things he was saying was, imagine it was your first space, or not your first space, but your first time finding out about XRP, and a lot of these people were not giving out accurate information. So imagine you're thinking, okay, I want to get into crypto, and I
welcome.
want to find out. I want to find out which one is a good project, and then all of a sudden you hear all these people that are just saying misinformation, and you're
Yeah.
like, "Whoa, never mind."
Well,
So
that's the last
you
6
know,
years of my life.
very thankful that Matt was there, because I was pulling my hair out, man. Like the stuff that we're saying, and then when Matt came in, he just schooled everyone.
Well, I'm actually surprised they let him in because, I mean, I couldn't listen, so that's fine. But I mean, not speak. I just couldn't even listen. I kept getting rugged or having quote unquote connection issues, which I'm sure is Twitter's way of not telling me your ass got booted, right? But whatever. And I'm surprised they let Matt up to speak because from what I gathered from other folks that were messaging me, anyway, yeah, I'm just surprised they let him up. I mean, it's a good thing.
I was surprised too, guys.
Hi, Matt.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you for
thank
that,
you for
Matt.
joining.
that's all right.
You
They didn't at
just
first,
roadkill
right?
everywhere.
I requested to speak.
I didn't even notice you were in here.
Oh, I just came in. I just grabbed a beer. I'm slightly losing my voice. I got a sore throat anyway, and then after that last session, I just grabbed a beer so I can chill out in this session a little bit. But yeah, I requested to speak, and they wouldn't let me up for ages. And then I DM'd Kai from X Punks, who was speaking, and I said, look, just let him know that I'm here and invite me up, and he did, and still nothing happened. And so I'm there, like waving at the moderator, and then finally they let me up. So yeah.
Well, I don't even know what the hell they were talking about because I couldn't hear any of it. So, whatever it was, Matt, I'm sure you did a good job at explaining stuff, but I don't even know
Matt did an excellent job, man.
Yeah.
Sure.
The thing that bugs me is, as I didn't see, because I just came in as they were saying, so I didn't see who was saying it, but whoever was just saying, if this is your first time in the space and you hear all this misinformation, right, that's the first thing you're going to hear, and you're going to walk away with it. And it's the thing. I mean, you folks that see me on Twitter, right, battling backwards and forwards, it's a I sometimes think it's a fool's game, but it's kind of the problem being is that it's so self-referential, right? Someone will say, well, hey, look, I've just pulled up a report from the BIS, and that says that XRP is centralized. Now, that was probably written by someone who saw something that saw something that saw something that said it was centralized, right? And then so somebody else sees it and then writes a blog post about it, and then somebody sees the blog post and writes a news article, and then somebody tweets about it. And this is the problem: is that if there's literally, I've just tweeted back to somebody about 5 minutes ago who brought up a report about Bitcoin and about Gensler, because they were saying that, well, Bitcoin's got regulatory clarity, and I say, well, no, it hasn't. And they posted up the original, like, Hinman, Gensler, whatever it was, speech from 2 years ago, and I was like, look, dude, you're obviously not following what's been going on, right? He's walked that back and said that was personal opinion, and then it wasn't, and it was, and it wasn't, and whatever the hell's going on, right? So, but if you want to find out, if you've got an opinion, you can look and find anything to support it. That's the big problem.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with the self-referential comment. This is why I try not to engage with this stuff. I just, let it be. That's fine.
I try my best to engage with it as much as I can too, but sometimes, it's difficult because you are dealing with very hard-headed people sometimes, and if you feel like those two gentlemen in the audience, I don't know if you noticed one of them, Ron, he seemed to have just left as soon as you came, and so sometimes I feel like some of these men are paid to be doing the misinformation spreading that they are doing, and then we have, of course, negative feedback.
Yeah, Ran Noyo, I said it before. That dude is a bad representation of South Africa in general, because the stuff they're doing with Ripple and XRP down here is huge.
Yeah, don't worry.
Honestly, I just don't think they do their homework. They literally, I don't think even look into it. That's my point of view.
I think they have just really the bias was very clear when someone was mentioning, but there's also like a very small percentage of Bitcoin addresses who hold Bitcoin, excluding also like exchanges. And he was like, yeah, so what? So yeah, that argument applies not for Bitcoin, but for XRP suddenly. And this is this is where you can, see like, okay, it's not serious.
Well, they did the classic, like when they started the conversation. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, that's one of my common responses. You'll see it a lot of the times. And yes, I'm being slightly flippant and a bit of an arse about it, but it is, quite often my response is, yeah, just like Bitcoin. And they're like, whoa, what do you mean just like Bitcoin?
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, well, the argument just applies exactly to Bitcoin. Well, no, it doesn't, because this. No, it does, right? The point you're making could apply exactly to Bitcoin. And it's just selective application. That's the problem.
This is why, honestly, and I'll be quite really frank, I'd rather not waste a whole bunch of today's chat discussing it. I mean, I think we've all been around long enough to see this BS, and it's more valuable, I think, to spend time talking about how these tools work and how they can be applied reasonably. And, if other folks want to do whatever they want, then let them do whatever they want to do. I mean, whatever. That's fine. Is it annoying somewhat? Yeah, sure, fine. But I
was saying in David's space earlier, for me, it just made me more bullish, because if everybody was bullish on XRP and everybody was promoting it in that space, then I would have been like, oh, But I mean, just the overwhelming amount of misinformation that was spread there, and I don't know who said earlier, but ran, like his name states, ran away at very shortly after Matt started schooling him, and it was that part was funny.
Well, I mean, if there's misinformation that we can address here with correct information, that's fine, but I don't know. I'm over it at this point. It's been so long. I just kind of, just don't care. I don't know how to say that.
Go ahead, Kosh. You got your hand up. Thank you for raising it.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you for having me up. Don't get often to be in the same space with Matt, so I've been seeing you, man, for years and years in the space. So just wanted to say appreciate everything you were doing before and after and now. So yeah, man, you're a good dude. I know there's a lot of business, disclosure things maybe you can or can't speak to. But do you have any personal opinion about what value proposition between Filecoin and Flare might have as potentially working together?
So for the background, for those that don't know, I'm starting with Filecoin, Protocol Labs, which is the company that's involved with Filecoin, on Monday. So I just signed all the contracts today. So I'm going to be starting with them as principal developer advocate, specifically working on, at least this year, an aspect called the FVM, the Filecoin Virtual Machine. And it's an Ethereum compatible, EVM compatible virtual machine they're building on top of Filecoin. Now, what makes it so interesting compared to all of there's like a dozen different like Ethereum but not Ethereum blockchains out there, right? I mean, what makes it interesting with Filecoin is involved with storage and involved with IPFS. And IPFS is like the kind of almost now de facto standard for decentralized storage. And what this allows is you to run smart contracts that can then access data in IPFS. So you could, in theory, so there's a whole division called compute over data within Protocol Labs. And so in theory, the idea being is that you could go and store like gigabytes of data on IPFS or terabytes of data on IPFS. And then you could write a smart contract that could process data and access data in IPFS, which is, really damn cool, right? So that's what kind of sets it apart from the other ones. In terms of kind of any interaction with Flare, so earlier on, somebody, I can't remember who it was now, tweeted that, and Matt's joining Filecoin and they accidentally put FLR instead of FIL. And I was like, wait, hold on here. This is Filecoin, not Flare, just to be clear to everyone. So I don't know what any relationship between Flare and Filecoin would look like. I don't even know if there is one. If there is one, maybe there is. I've just started with stuff with Protocol Labs, and there's so much there that they're involved with that, I just don't know. So maybe I'll be able to answer that in a few weeks' time. But for the moment, I've got no specific idea, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that would be cool because I know Filecoin is going to be one of the F assets, which means they've written a smart contract to be deployed on making with the utilization of being able to wrap the asset and have it represented on their network at least. But I don't know if there's any connection between the dev team communication between the two.
Hey, congratulations there, Matt. Filecoin's one of the few that I think actually has real utility and economic reasonability. So congratulations. That's great to hear.
Thank you. Yeah, and I mean that's one of the reasons why I wanted to work with them. And similarly, when I was working with BitTensor for a short while, it was kind of looking at projects that are useful and very different, right? As you all know, I love the XRP ledger. The XRP ledger was, still my first love, right? So I'm not looking to work with anything else that is like competing with that, but that is complementary. Now, IPFS is used everywhere, especially with NFTs, right? So if you go and store an NFT on the XRP ledger, the chances are you'd probably use IPFS to store the actual image or data or whatever it is, right? So there's a natural link between them. But beyond that, what some people don't realize is Protocol Labs also, as well, are involved in a thing called libp2p, which is a general peer-to-peer library that a load of other blockchains use. So a load of other blockchains, I can't remember which off the top of my head, but I mean, if you go and look up libp2p and look down at the logos, you'll recognize half those blockchains as being, top 20, top 50 blockchains, probably on CoinMarketCap, using this libp2p as part of the mechanism that the nodes on the blockchain use to communicate with each other, right? So it's just a library. It's a bit of code that these blockchains can use to do some of the boilerplate communication work that they need to do for nodes to be able to communicate with each other, right? So that's really cool. So that's what I quite like about the Filecoin project, about Protocol Labs. They're working on building the protocols that are really going to change the future. And decentralized storage is one of those. In the same way that I think about the XRP ledger and decentralized payment, I think Protocol Labs, Filecoin, and decentralized storage. So I think there's a lot of potential synergy in the future there between those two.
Hey, Matt, can you explain? I mean, maybe you could. I don't know if but can you? Is IPFS on Filecoin? What this always comes up in conversations, and I've never quite gotten my head wrapped around it. I mean, is IPFS like a? I mean, it can't be a DNS system. It's got to be like a hosting system.
Right. So considering I'm on day -4 here of my job at Filecoin, Take this with just a little bit of salt, because I may not have the best way of explaining this yet. I've been explaining the XRP ledger for 5 years. I'm very good at it. I'm not as au fait yet with all the working parts of IPFS and Filecoin. But the way I understand it, and the way I'm going to try and explain it is, so IPFS is a protocol for storing data in a decentralized manner across the internet, right? So you're used to web URLs, right? HTTP:// blah, 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 right? Now, URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. And so the locator part, a URL tells you where something is, right? If you're going to www.microsoft.com/foo/bar, that is telling you that that file is on Microsoft server. You go to Microsoft's domain and you're getting it from Microsoft, right? With IPFS, it's location independent. It's a URI, Uniform Resource Indicator, not Uniform Resource Locator. It identifies something, but without telling you where exactly it is. So I guess kind of like a telephone number can identify me, but doesn't tell me where I am necessarily. Okay, area code, yada, yada, yada. But, a European mobile phone number doesn't tell you really where I am, maybe apart from down to the country level. Whereas a postal address tells you exactly where I am, right? So IPFS is a way of storing data in a decentralized manner without having to worry where it is. You just say, store this data, and it gives you back this address, this URI, this indicator, and then you can go back to it and say, give me the data back that's stored there. And you don't even know where it is. Now, the slight problem with that is that who is storing that data and what is the incentive for them to store that data? That's where Filecoin comes in. So Filecoin is a blockchain and a mechanism to kind of pay for and incentivize the storage of the data. So what can happen is you have these what are called storage providers, and these storage providers have, whatever terabytes or whatever, petabytes of data that they can store, and they effectively bid for these storage contracts on the Filecoin network. So when you want to store something, you're effectively paying for that storage with Filecoin, and you're kind of paying the end provider to store it. That's simplified. There's a whole negotiation thing going on, and I actually saw today a tweet from somebody saying that due to the weird way the economics worked, somebody had actually been paid by a storage provider to store their data. So they actually got paid for storing data, not they had to pay for storing data, right? It actually went the other way around, which is quite amazing.
Oh dear. That definitely doesn't sound right.
Well, I think it is. I think it just depends on the way the economics work, right? You have market models, and you can have stuff sometimes that goes negative depending upon a lot of other real world scenarios, right? You might have a storage provider that want to incentivize people to store with them because they're trying to build out their network, or I don't know, whatever reason. There's a whole multitude of reasons why that might happen.
I could see that. Like a lost leader type thing.
Yeah, potentially. So that's the idea. So Filecoin so IPFS is the protocol for storing and the method by which the storage happens. Filecoin is an implementation, I believe, of IPFS that allows the storage, but has used as a cryptocurrency and a blockchain to deal with the whole economic side of the storage and the payment, right?
Do you know about Enigma at all?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, never mind then.
So could Filecoin coexist with like Codius and stuff like that, Interledger?
Yeah, two completely different use cases. To my understanding.
Yeah, the different use cases, but they could be. I mean, if you think about like what like Coil is doing with paying content creators using Interledger, you could kind of think maybe Filecoin's doing something similar with the storage of the content, right? So maybe there's some analogies there, and maybe there could be some ways in which they could interact. Like I said, IPFS is kind of a specification and a protocol for doing the decentralized storage. Filecoin is one implementation of that. So I guess in theory, you could create an IPFS implementation on top of Interledger using Codius, perhaps, right? That might be something you could do. Don't quote me on that, but from my understanding, that is the way it could work. You could build an IPFS implementation using Codius and Interledger, for example. Then that would directly compete with Filecoin.
Right, like a bit of storage already. Yeah, I get it. It's cool.
That's
I mean, Codius, I think, was Filecoin around before Codius, or was Codius around before Filecoin?
Good question. I don't know. I'll have to look that up. I don't know the dates that specifically things came around, so I'm not sure.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Codius was like 2015, 2016, right? And Filecoin was somewhere 2017, 2018. I don't think it was in. I think it came towards the latter end of the last bull market cycle previous to what we had.
No, because Codius was around for a good year or so before Ethereum, and I think what did Ethereum launch in was it 15 or 16?
Yeah, so my gut feeling would be that
Whatever.
Codius was before Filecoin.
I'm pretty sure. I'm looking it up right now.
That's interesting the way you phrased that, though, Matt. Because in some sense they do kind of perform the same functionality, right? Am I hearing you wrong?
No, they do perform. You're right. They do perform similar functionality, and there's actually, I'll tell you what is similar. So there's a project within Protocol Labs called Bacalhau. I can't remember exactly how to spell it. Bachalau. I think if you search for Bacalhau, maybe Bacalhau and Protocol Labs, you'll find it between the two of them. But Bacalhau actually seems a little bit like Codius in that Bacalhau is a way to submit jobs to a network to be processed. So you could write a bit of code and say, go and execute this on 3 hosts, and it will go away, execute it on 3 hosts and bring it back. And again, I think it uses Docker, similar to Codius. And so they do a kind of a similar thing. Then what Bacalhau does is add on top of that a kind of verification, kind of consensus thing, right? If I send a script off to some host and say, here, run this code, I've got no idea it's going to come back with legitimate data, right? It could just come back with complete rubbish. And so how do I know that it's valid? And so you have these verifiers. So what might happen is Bacalhau sends it off to 3 different nodes, gets back 3 results, and then it's the job of the verifier to compare them and find out whether it's true, right? And now it could be as simple as, well, it's legitimate, right? So yeah, that's one way of doing it. If you're dealing with things like machine learning workloads, then there's a lot of randomness in there, right? And so if you ask a machine learning model to come back with a result, if you run that job 3 different times, you're going to get 3 ever so slightly different results because there's a little bit of randomness in there. And so the verifier would need to be able to understand that. And actually, funnily enough, that is pretty much what BitTensor was doing that I was working for before, right? BitTensor was solving that problem of how do we do decentralized machine learning, and how do we ask a bunch of nodes to do some machine learning work and come back with something that's coherent. How do we trust that? And they had a way in which they could do that. They had a series of validators that would validate the data in a slightly fuzzier way that is suitable for machine learning. And the nodes that come back with the correct data get rewarded with tokens. And so that's how they solved that. So what's funny is you could kind of almost see BitTensor as being a very specific version of what Protocol Labs building with Bacalhau. Not quite, but it's a generalization, kind of first order approximation.
Very, very interesting though, because Filecoin, July 15th, 2014 concept was released, but it wasn't on, I guess, the open market, and they had been selling them on the open market was 7/19/2017. So that's why I guess I didn't realize it was created. I thought it was created around that time, but early concept.
They were one of the first. They were the pioneer, actually, I think, for what do you call it? SAFT or something. It's an investment contract type thing, and they were the first ones to do that method.
Yeah, I mean, the same creator of IPFS is the same creator of Filecoin, Juan Benet.
Juan Benet, yeah.
Benet,
He's
sorry.
like the David Schwartz of the Filecoin world.
Very interesting. Thank you. I'm going to look into him.
Yeah, it was called a SAFT, Simple Agreement for Future Tokens, which was basically a copy-paste from the legal and regulatory stuff. So, like Y Combinator and like 500 or whatever the hell, 500 startups or whatever that other thing is. And there's a couple of these Techstars, all this stuff. Basically, they used it's effectively like I'd have to look at the thing and see if it qualifies as a warrant or an option. But they use one of those two methods, and Filecoin, I think, was the first one to use the SAFT, which is just let's change a couple of words, and the contract logic's the same. But they were selling this stuff early on before the network existed. I even though I liked the project, I stayed away from it at the time because I wasn't sure. I mean, this stuff was all brand new, right?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that Filecoin, the way the Filecoin blockchain works, if I'm right, again, take this with a slight pinch of salt, but I believe it uses what's effectively called proof of space as a consensus mechanism, which is basically because you've got all this storage of files, you can ask someone later on to prove that they are holding a particular bit of data, and that is kind of effectively your stake, right? So that's kind of how they're kind of staking that data, which is as opposed to there's another blockchain called Chia that uses a thing called proof of space and time, and they do a very similar thing. When Chia launched, you might remember about 18 months ago, there was a big spike in people buying SSDs to mine Chia, and the way that Chia works is it stores random data on the disks and uses that to prove it. And Chia's thesis is, well, Filecoin uses known data, and because the data is known data, the system can be gamed. So we use random data. I haven't looked into it enough to assess that, but I was looking quite closely at Chia recently for how they work. And what was interesting with Chia actually is, so they caused a massive spike in SSD prices because everybody was buying SSDs in order to farm Chia when it first came out. What's happening now is people are buying end-of-life drives off of big storage companies. So these big storage companies will replace drives routinely when they know they're near failure time, and people are buying these drives and using them on Chia on the basis that if the drive fails, well, hey, no big deal. It was just random data on there. The data itself is not important. It's just the existence of the data, is part of the mining process. If you lose the drive, you don't lose your funds. You just lose a little bit of income that was being derived from what's called farming on that drive. So it doesn't matter that the drives are not that reliable, right? If you can get them cheaply. So what's actually happened is Chia's actually evolved a secondary market of people buying drives that would be heading to landfill to set up Chia mining farms and giving those drives maybe a little bit more life. I guess they eventually end up in the landfill when they finally die. But, it's that was quite interesting that they'd actually gone negative on the kind of environmental aspect, because their first bit was, well, we don't use proof of work mining, so we're carbon neutral. But now the fact that they're actually reusing and recycling old hard drives is actually making them like net carbon negative, which is quite interesting. But anyway, that's a digression. That was a network called Chia.
You probably heard of Storage as well.
No, I've not used Doge.
Storage network. It's similar to Chia as well. They were doing the same thing, but with them you have to like wait for 3 days to verify everything and stuff like that, so you don't mess up the network. They were mentioned on an Adara Hashgraph patent.
Okay, no, I've not heard of them.
That's cool.
Well, thank you for that information. I always love when I get to hear somebody speak about something and I get to learn about it, because these spaces we hold them Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, and we wouldn't be doing them if it wasn't everybody finding them valuable, other than myself and Karma. But I really love it when people come up and give us information. I thank you for coming to the space so far, Matt.
No problem. Thanks for hosting them.
Yeah, I mean, and just also for everyone, like, it is an open forum, right? So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and as long as you're polite and cordial and everything, then that's fine. If you want to join not join, but follow the ledgerscale thing, that would be helpful, because we've got to get that up over 1,000 for some reason. But yeah, that so far this is just all a volunteer effort. We're trying to formalize some of this stuff, and anyway.
So I had somebody just message me a question, Matt, and they wanted me to ask it to you specifically. Do you have any information or in a technical breakdown about the I think it's the XLS 30, the AMM amendment that was talked about by David Schwartz?
No, nothing other than what was published. So it was being worked on at Ripple whilst I was there. But no, I don't know anything specific. I know that David has talked about that there's some specific kind of protection that it has that mitigates the issue of impermanent loss that most normal like AMMs have. Beyond that, I don't know any of the specifics. I've not really had a time to look into it. It'll be great when it comes about, because one of the big things that a lot of other blockchains have is with AMMs, it makes it very easy for people to get passive income by staking their XRP or whatever their coin is on the network in order to get passive income. That's not really possible on the XRP ledger. Yes, there's the DEX, and the only other way you can kind of simulate that is running a market maker. And maybe I've been running one on the DEX for a long time. With an AMM, that means anybody can do that. You don't need to have the kind of skills of a market maker to do that. So I think that's going to be pretty cool when that comes out. But I don't know any specific technical details really about it.
I mean, I've read through the thing, and I think the way that it takes the impermanent loss and puts it, the mechanism it uses to put the impermanent loss to the side is it allows, say, a staker to only stake one side of the pool, right? Because you can't have impermanent loss if you're only exposed to one side of the pool. And then when you start getting into some of the math, and I'm not really sure I fully understand. Actually, I promise you I don't fully understand it. So, but when I think the way that it counterweights some of that is through the liquidity pool token, and that's about the best I've got. I'm going to have to read that thing again, but my God, I don't read that fast, and that's not easy reading. I mean, I love this stuff, but it's not easy reading.
Yeah, I know I think there has been some discussion about these liquidity pool tokens and how they're represented on the XRP ledger. I think there's been some discussion about the actual, the way down to the data layer as to how they're stored as objects within the XRP ledger in order to make them efficient, whatever. That's the kind of level of like Nick Bougalis like level code that I'm not at that kind of deep level. And in terms of the actual protocol, for the AMM, the maths behind it, that's David and Anchal at Ripple. And Anchal's a pretty smart cookie with regards to kind of the mathematics behind some of this stuff as well, which again goes beyond me.
I mean, I started to get a feel for actually some of the math is kind of similar to financials, but not really, but similar. But I started to get a feel for how where the balancing act is, and I think it's basically the liquidity token, liquidity pool token, because at some point, right? Okay, let's say let's say you have an AMM, and there's two different assets, right? Think of it as don't think of it as an order book. It's not an order book. Well, it kind of is, but it's not really. But if you change something on one side of the pool, then you've got to, like, just from an accounting point of view, you got to balance that out. And the liquidity pool token, I think, is the mechanism that's used there. But see, this does give folks the ability and I don't think anything else out there exists like this. Not that I'm aware of, anyhow. I mean, if there does, someone send it to me and I'll read that too. But I don't think there's anything else out there like this where you can provide liquidity, but only on one side of the market. I mean, outside of using an order book on a DEX, but like to your point, Matt, then somebody actually has to know what they're doing, right? Like, it's not so much of a passive thing; it's more of like an active thing. Like the people that run. Well, you got a market maker that you run, right?
Right.
Like,
exactly. So you've got to know a bit about it in order to do that. Whereas with an AMM, you don't. You just put your assets in and away you go.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
So
huge. I mean, when people talk about making stuff simple, that's just. I mean, there you go. Right.
I think the quick capabilities or the quick things that give the capabilities to the AMM, if it was able to do that, would be the quick consensus of the ledger, right? Being able to have the 3 to 4 second execution times and having the DEX already integrated into the protocol. That to me would be, if I would think about like how the AMM would have this ability to have that secret sauce where you could have that single-sided staking for not only XRP but for all of the varieties of trust line tokens that exist. I would think that's why we are able to have that capability in the AMM. If that makes sense.
I will say some of the formulas really reminded me of like old school finance class. I mean, just the structure of the formula. It was like, I know it's doing something different, so it's not the same thing, but I swear I was looking at some of these formulas and I was like, okay, I got to take a break because I'm conflating this in my head, because even the exponential part of it and then the whole one minus in the fraction part, and it's all very similar. Really.
Welcome up, Greek. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me on. And, Matt, just wanted to commend you in the last space that you were there. I was listening to it, and you really laid the plan out for XRP in that space and silenced a lot of people. But this question is directed to you, anybody else in the space. Every time I watch some of these blockchains get hacked and I see, people getting their funds stolen, I commonly see the US dollar coin, and maybe somebody can enlighten me, shouldn't that be able to be tracked and be able to get their funds back? And I never see Circle or anybody try to get in front of saying, hey, we're trying to work with you, but, if that's going to be the space in the future of it, they got some problems they really have to stitch up. But if you can answer that, like, is there any way to get those coins back, especially the dollar coins, once it's been hacked and taken?
I think the thing being is that generally they're washed pretty quickly. So those US dollar coins then get like Uniswap or something like that, or they get an exchange.
Is it just me or did Matt cut out?
Yeah, I think it cut
Oh,
out.
I thought it was. I got worried for a second. Twitter has really been acting up today.
Hello, am I here?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yep, you're back.
Yeah.
You're back.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, I was just trying to say that the big problem is they get washed so quickly. So they get sent to like a DEX, and then they get sent to a centralized exchange, and then to another one. So in theory, somebody like Circle could try and claim them back, but it would be really difficult to identify them because they are fungible, right? So it's very difficult to kind of trace them back because they get moved so quickly.
So even if, the underlying assets, let's say for BNY, had the CUSIP number, the treasuries, or any other type of paper out there, especially with BlackRock getting into the game, once they redeem them, so there's no kind of CUSIP number each one, even though they've been washed back and forth. But, once they try to get redeemed with the underlying assets, what happens then?
Good question. I don't really know, but like I said, because they're fungible tokens and they can be moved around so easily, and because they are, pegged to the US dollar, it's really easy for me to go from USDC to USDT to BUSD to whatever, very easily, and there's not really going to be that much, trace, right? I could take some USDC, send it to Binance, take out the Binance USD, send it to, I think, crypto.com, accept Binance USD, swap it to USDT, then withdraw it from there. And send, it's because they're pegged to the US dollar, they're one-to-one. In many cases, it's very easy to move them around without even any slippage on the trades. So you can go very quickly without loss on them.
All right, I appreciate the answer. I just, you hear BlackRock coming into the space here, and they're big backers of the USDC. So
Yeah.
hopefully they're going to be able to get this right now and the details out, because, if it keeps happening like that, nobody's going to want to put their money in these coins.
Yeah. And so for this instance of what just happened, I think the hack you're talking about is the wallet creator who unfortunately had not encrypted the message of the seed phrase being transferred from the creation to the person whoever was creating the wallet. But the USD was on Solana, so the representation of it was on Solana, and Solana has a pretty quick block time, the transaction speed. So it was easily for them to go from the USDC right into Solana using some sort of DEX on the network itself. But like you said before, Greek, if they were going to get them at the exchange, what they would do is they would have to track those transactions back to the exchange, and then authorities would have to contact the exchange, and hopefully, at that point in time, they haven't been cashed out. But even if they do cash out, right, at that point, they're at a bank, which is KYC, and they're going to get them there. But this is a lot of work, right? And there's no real set laws or regulations around it. So to get authorities to do this is quite difficult, unless it's a lot of money. But go ahead, pay me in XRP. Thank you for raising.
Absolutely. I want to say how was everybody first and foremost. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
I want to direct this to Matt Hamilton. I was listening to the space earlier, and I was listening to so many of those Bitcoin masters, and they were posing a lot of points that I knew they were wrong, but I didn't know the answers to them or how to verbalize it. And when you came into the space, man, it was like a superhero came into the space. Like, I was clapping, like, man, my girl was listening to it. Like, I was cheering from the sidelines, man. You made me feel so good, and I just want to give you your flowers and tell you thank you. And I sincerely mean it with all my heart. Thank you.
Thanks very much. That's quite a
quite a response. So thank you. I'm glad you found it useful.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's all I wanted to say.
I can only second this because it was like really like that. Yeah.
They wouldn't even let me. Not only would they not let me or Death up, they wouldn't even let me listen. So whatever.
You know, it's unfortunate because that guy Mario too, when he first started the conversation, he had mentioned the Reddits, which like the XRP and the Ripple Reddit, which has been around for a really long time, and after that, it was just like everything negative from him.
Yeah, from that on, it went like really south. I mean, everything was thrown around, right? I mean, centralized holdings, the past of the XRPL, Ripple, like everything went. They threw everything.
Solana's better, more stable.
Everything. It was like a mess.
I mean, most people in here have been around for a while. Like, I've heard all this stuff before. It's a waste of my time. Tell me something I don't know. Tell me something I haven't heard. Right? Like, how are we going to build something? What's there to do? I'm over this kind of stuff. It's childish, and I don't care. That's just for what that's worth. I don't know.
I've got a question for Matt Hamilton. With regards to the Rafiki wallet stuff, that's different. Thomas, do you have any info or updates on how that's going to go, or when that's going to be fully on the scene?
No, I don't. I keep meaning to look into it, and when I was at Ripple, my kind of counterpart at Coil and the Interledger Foundation, Uchi, I keep meaning to kind of get in touch with him, and we talked back and forth a few times. But I wanted to kind of do a Twitch stream and get him on to talk about Rafiki, but I ended up that never happened. So no, I don't know any specifics about the launch of it. I mean, I think it's soon because I think they're getting people trying to like build on an early version of it. But I don't know anything more than that.
Didn't they make another version of it, like an updated version? I'm pretty sure I saw that.
Maybe they did. I haven't been following it that closely, I'm afraid.
I mean, I've looked at it, but I don't always understand everything I read, so.
But yeah, and if there's anybody in the audience that has any questions about anything that's been talked about or has a completely different topic that they'd like to bring up, please feel free to hit the request and come up and ask. We have plenty of room for speakers up here. Just inviting people up. You don't have to accept if you don't want to, guys.
My biggest takeaway personally from that space was like how much work basically we have to do to. I mean, obviously there are people who are really stubborn and you will never get through them, but like the general public, that there are still like very, very old biases around there, like how the XRPL works and what's the position of Ripple is in this ecosystem. So I think there's like a lot of work in that sense to do. But yeah, let's see.
Indeed, I mean there was a guy there. What's his name? Simon Dixon, and he said, "Look, I'm an investor in Ripple, the company, right?" He's like, "I'm a shareholder of Ripple. I believe in what they're doing, but I just don't get XRP." And he's like, "If you can, I will cheer when I can make a payment from my bank account and it uses the XRP ledger and gets the other end." I was like, "Well, that is happening now. It might not be your bank account, right? But I mean, if you've got a bank account with, I don't know, Siam Commercial Bank in Thailand, or you're using one of the remittance companies, Asimo or CoinsPH or something like that uses Ripple and ODL, that is a reality now. And I've said it before that the XRP ledger is boring, and that is a good thing, right? It does payments, and it does payments well, and it just works. And that is why there's not a lot of like mind share about it now, because all the other blockchains are fixing these big problems, right? Look at what Ethereum's doing with moving to proof of stake. Look at what Bitcoin's doing with Lightning Network. Look at what Solana's doing with just trying to stay working, right? The XRP ledger doesn't have those problems. And so it does seem boring because it just works. And so that's sometimes almost like a negative when you're trying to do like marketing around it, because people see, oh, there's all this development happening on Ethereum. It's like, well, yeah, there is all this development happening on Ethereum, but half of it is just fixing shit that's broken that we don't have to do.
Matt, when I first heard you make that point, I can't tell you, I smiled. Or I can tell you I smiled. Because it's such a good point. I mean, what are you going to build
if XRP is ultimately successful, then you won't know, right? Because if the technology is good, you won't even know it works, right? Think about it. When ADSL came out and replaced dial-up, that was a big thing, and everybody was interested in how ADSL worked and the type of modem and this, that, and the other, right? At least in the tech community, we're interested in it. Nobody cares now, right? It's just your internet connection. Is it ADSL? Is it fiber? Is it nobody even cares? It just I want an internet connection, give me an internet connection, and away you go. You don't care what the technology is underneath it, right? In the same way, you don't know the name of the company that produces the water pipes that connect your house to the mains water. Yet there is a company out there, and they're probably a very successful company, and they probably make a large turnover making water pipes that connect your house. And it's like the most boring thing, but it is essential, and it works. And those water pipes have probably gone through some like major technical innovation at some point in their time when they switched from being lead to steel to plastic to whatever, right? Or a type of coating in them that makes them more efficient, or whatever. There will have been advances in technology that for the people involved in that industry were probably groundbreaking, and they were having conferences and doing talks about coatings on water pipes and I don't know, whatever, right? Whereas for you and I, it's just like we don't give a shit. It's water. We turn the tap when it comes out. That's all we care about, right? And cryptocurrency is in that stage at the moment where we're debating the pipes. We're not looking at, okay, what are we doing with the water that's coming out at the other end? Well, some people are. I think actually the XRP community is further along in this regards, in that they are looking at the end point. And that's why a lot of like some of those people on that last space were saying, well, what's going on with XRP? It's not being used. It's not being used. I'm like, it is being used, but it's in some ways so successful in some of its usage that it's not visible, right? It's Ripple moving billions of dollars annually over ODL, and you don't know about it just because it's working, right? So, yeah, I don't know what the answer is there.
You'll know about it if something goes wrong.
Right. And that's like, I used to be a sysadmin, and it was the curse of the sysadmin, right? Nobody ever knows you're around until something goes wrong, right? And then it's your fault, right? If everything's working, they don't know you're there.
I played a lot of soccer, or what I prefer to call football, like real football, when I was younger. And the goalie can win or lose a game, but you know what? Nobody goes up to the goalie at the end of the game and high fives him. They go to the forward who scored the goal. Right? But you would have lost that game without the goalie. And it's like just this unthanked, I don't know, how do you say it? Well, like you just said with the sysadmin, nobody's going to call you until like it hits the fan, right? Like when things go wrong, you're getting a call. When things go right, whatever.
All right. And Wolf, thank you very much, man. You've had your hand up for a little bit. If you'd like to go ahead and speak.
Yes, hello guys, and thanks so much for all the interesting conversation so far. I was just wondering a little bit about if someone can answer that, how the issuing with the CBDCs will take place, because it won't be as easy as just set up a trust line, I bet. Will say if Jamaica will set up their own CBDCs, will they use a side chain, for example? Or how will that work? Because they will have to hold a certain amount of XRP, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know the specifics of that because I wasn't involved directly with the CBDC stuff at Ripple. What I can tell you is that Ripple are they've been building a whole suite of products to help with CBDCs, right? So they've got a system for issuing. They've got like a whole UI for issuing CBDCs and like a cashier workflow. So it's issuing a token in the same way like you or I could go and issue a token, and you can use like XRPL services and some or whatever, and it's fairly easy to issue a token. But if you imagine that at an institutional scale, when you've got to have certain checks and balances and procedures, so Ripple have been working on software to do that they can then kind of offer to these to the banks that are offering the CBDCs to actually then go out and actually issue them, right? And I think that would also include things like holding the balances and all of that kind of thing, the backing funds and everything. I think is all part of that as well. So, but yeah, I don't know specifics there exactly.
And I'm sure they're holding it on the private ledger as well. I don't think it's on public, because that's just for central banks, correct?
Well, they would probably do it on a side chain. Yeah, I mean that's kind of the point of the side chains, was that they could do it on a side chain, and they could make it a bit more private if they wanted to as well. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, I've talked about this in here before. I think it's insane for anybody to think a central bank is going to not manage and control their own ledger. I mean, that just is. That just seems like the craziest thing in the world.
Yeah,
I don't. But I mean, it's like not feasible times two. Like,
yeah, they're moving a lot of money.
And I would assume that every instance would have its own specific needs and use cases for different things as well.
yeah, but the central bank has to be in control of the ledger that they are tasked with controlling, right? I mean, it's like if you're a fireman and you have a fire truck that you can't drive. Like what good is that? It's just weird. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I think it's a little more nuanced than that. It's like it's a fire truck. You've got to be able to drive it, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be able to build a fire truck or maintain it. You might outsource the maintenance of your fire truck. You can still drive it. So a central bank doesn't necessarily have to be in control of the network. They have to have access to the network. They have to be in control of the issuance of the token on the network. But they don't have to be in control of the whole network as in the whole consensus protocol. They'll probably want to be. I don't doubt that. But I guess technically they don't need to be, but they'll probably want to be.
I can see that, but I would think they would want to be in control of the maintenance and the whole vertically integrated whole everything. I mean, if I was running the central bank, trust me, I wouldn't be letting anybody touch my.
I could say this in the sense of, if you hire a company to run it for you, I mean, are you in control of it? I would say that's sufficient in the institutional grade standpoint, right? You can't fully be, in control. But in that
you're just using the product. You're just using
connect with other ledgers, use other providers. I mean, look, the central banks use. It just escaped me. There's only a certain number of. Oh, shoot. The institutional banks that are allowed to trade directly with the central bank. I mean, you got to have a license and everything just to get a reserve account, but that's not what I'm talking about. There's only, access control, I think, is critically important, and the central bank of each country should be in charge of that, for sure. This is how you bring in the licensing and the regulation and the making sure that everything's according to on the up and up, if you will. what do you call the primary dealers? So you got primary dealers, like they're the ones. So if you want to buy like a new issuance of, say, a treasury, you have to go through one of these primary dealers. I mean, so there's ways that central banks can control the ledger and still have it open to the public. I mean, it's not a new thing, and I think they should control it.
Yeah, Anonymous, you've had your hand up for a while, man. Go ahead. And if I kick you guys down, just request to come back up if you'd like to come back up, just because we have people that are requesting to come.
Thanks, by the way, Matt. Thanks so much, and Karma, for clearing that up.
Just two things that I'll touch up on. I kind of missed out on the spaces you guys were in. From what I've heard, it was quite funny. But yeah, I was in a XDC developers space with the XDC Foundation and Quincy, and one of the guys, I don't know how reliable it is, but they said they're working on a bridge to the XRP ledger with the XDC token. And number two, from what I've figured out, is if you had a ledger and you got qualified, you did the airdrop for the Flare token, so you already would have received the Songbird. So as far as I'm aware, if you've already set that up and connect the ledger to the MetaMask off the same Songbird one, the Flare token will already update once the tokens are airdropped and the mainnet is out of observation mode. So yeah, that's some of the information I found out today. I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Do you have more information on the bridge that's that they're building?
No, but that I'm sure other people will, but I just tuned in purely to get involved with like understanding like how to get started in some of like coding from a total like beginner. So they was talking like, you know, ways that like don't even go into blockchain, you know, get literate with I think they said GitHub and JavaScript, and then start moving on from there. So yeah, no, it was really, I mean, some of the stuff, the tech stuff I didn't understand, but from a you know, a basic level, you know, I learned a few good things, and one of them, I think it was XDC Foundation, and obviously I had Quincy. So one of them definitely said that there's going to be a bridge from the XDC to the XRPL.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool. And you know, in the end of the day, it's a multi-chain world, right? And bridges are going to be the most essential thing to making this an interoperable system of multi-chain, right? My question always like just comes down to how is the operation between the blockchains being done? You know, is it a centralized multi-sig, or is there a smart contract with, you know, different things going on, like how Flare's doing it right now? But I'll look into it though. Thank you for the information.
Lena, did you have a question?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me up. Just a student of blockchain and learning XRP because of Karma, because he's such a nice guy. So I looked at some of the main points, and it says no chargebacks. Now, chargebacks to me is all about the retail world and, you know, customers returning things and such. So knowing barely anything about XRP, is it for different types of, like, is the vision for what type of transactions, like what categories then, if the merchants, especially the retail merchants, you know, want chargebacks? I actually have to think about, is it the merchant that the merchant that really needs it because he's got issues with customers. I know that the banks would love if it went away because it costs a fortune to actually facilitate chargebacks. So just curious why you make that statement, and does that then provide certain categories that XRP will live in and then possibly not? Thank you.
Well, I think that this I mean, I thought about this a lot when I was writing the How Xpool thing, because if I like loan you some XRP, right? what enforcement ability do I have to guarantee that you're going to pay me back?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I can't, and I mean, this is true for all blockchains. It doesn't matter which one. So
Right.
you gotta think through this situation. And at the end of the day, it comes down to law.
Right. Yes.
I
Because
mean,
chargebacks were facilitated because of issues, right?
well, if you join my understanding anyway, and I could be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but my understanding is that like RippleNet, like if I'm a bank and I sign up for RippleNet, there's an agreement that I have to, like a terms
Mm-hmm.
of service or something.
Oh, of
And that,
course. Yeah.
that somewhere in that terms of service is some legal work that says if I find out that one of my customers, got ripped off by one of your customers, then you have to pay me back, and it's up to you to deal with how you want to deal with your customer. Right. And then I got to give the money back to my customer. But I don't think there's, from a cryptography matter, I don't think there's
A way to change that transaction, right? It's a done deal.
there's a halfway step with payment
Oh.
channels. Like you can extend credit to somebody,
Yep.
but
You can put a hold. You can put a hold on a card, right? It puts it into the, like when you go to a hotel. There's a category for that. Is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about something different?
Well, in a payment channel, it has to be pre-funded. So, and it's only works with XRP.
Okay. I need to do more reading, don't I, Karma? Yeah.
Well, I mean, dude, you can read about this stuff all day long and still not know it.
It's so hard. Thanks for being patient.
No, it's all good. But you can, in a payment channel, you can pre-fund it and you put the XRP in there. And then, like, let's say I pre-funded the XRP. So I'm like, this is kind of the dynamics that I wrote about a few years ago. So I can pre-fund it, and then, but it's almost like I think this is probably possibly the roots of the line of credit, because it functions the same. So I let's say I put 100 XRP into a payment channel. All right, then it's up to me to send you a receipt, right? Like I'm gonna go buy something from you. So here, one thingamajigger. I'm going to buy it. 1 XRP per thingamajigger. So I send you a receipt for 1 XRP. You know I'm good for it because there's 100 XRP in the payment channel, right? Okay, now I'm going to buy another thingamajigger from you. Boom, another XRP. Now I owe you 2 XRP. You still know I'm good for it because there's 100 in the payment channel. Okay, we can keep this up for a while. And now let's say I owe you 10 XRP and you're ready to cash in because you got to pay your bills, right? So you need to cash in the earnings that you've done for selling me whatever these things are. So you can cash that in whenever you want to, right? It's to your advantage to it's to your advantage to wait and do like batch processing, because then you're only going to pay one transaction fee. Okay, so I'm sending you 1 XRP at a time. Well, you can claim each one of those receipts immediately. Okay, but now you've paid 10 transaction fees versus you could wait, I don't know, till you get the 10th payment and just pay 1 transaction fee. So there's a balancing act there that you would want to consider. That's not exactly like what you're saying with chargebacks, but in some sense, okay, so now I'm done doing business with you, okay? I've paid you 10 XRP. I don't like your service. Not going to use you anymore. You're off the vendor list. All right. The other 90 XRP in that payment channel, I can just take back to my account. I mean, I paid you what I owed you, right? but the other I can just take back to my account. So it's not exactly a chargeback.
Yeah, I think is it the word charge? Maybe that's where I struggle, because the word chargeback may mean one thing to certain people in the industry, and then it's sounding like it's acting in a a different way.
A chargeback. Okay, so when you do chargebacks, I don't know if you've ever had like a merchant account.
Yeah.
But
Well,
when
no,
you do chargebacks, you what?
I've dealt with them,
Yeah.
like their concerns. Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough, and you got, if you want to fight a chargeback. What's that?
I'm having problems with my phone. I'm trying to go on mute. I'm going to go down. I'll listen to you.
Okay, and listen, hit the request if you'd like to come back up. Thank you very much for the questions, though, Lena. And so, guys, we have like 15 more minutes in the space. We're going to end it right around right before 5 o'clock today. So if you guys have any questions, topics you'd like to bring up, please feel free to come up and request to speak. And if I could just ask everybody in the space, if you could just follow ledgerscale on Twitter and then turn those notifications on so you know we're going live, because we do these spaces 5 days out of the week. Well, we're on Saturday and Sunday also, but not on the ledgerscale account.
Yeah, and we do appreciate everyone participating. Not financial advice, all that stuff. Nothing we're saying here represents ledgerscale. We're just having conversations. These are open chats. The back to the chargeback thing. You got to put up a bunch of information when you try to ask a company to reverse a payment. I mean, it's not an easy process. I've had to do that a few times. Sometimes it's not even worth it. And even though that you are being scammed, right? It's almost cheaper and easier to just give the person the money back and just like move on with your day. Like, seriously, sometimes it just, I don't have time for this. Like, just whatever. I mean, it's really, and they want documentation and all this and that. And I've done chargebacks from I paid a developer one time to do some stuff. He never did anything. Right? So I did a chargeback on him, but that was from the payer point of view. And so I've been through it from that angle too. And that was a pain. I mean, it took like a month to get my money back. And yeah, see, and then what happens is the cost of all that overhead and processing power process, the cost of that process, all that costs gets distributed across the customers that aren't doing anything that needs to be charged back. Right. And I mean, there's a place I worked at, and they had people that were scammy type folks, and they would want to charge back stuff, and we'd have to go through and dig up documentation to send to the payment processor so that we could prove that, hey, this person has like signed a contract that they agreed to owe us this money, and that's like the same amount of money that we took, and that's like it, but if you don't have that stuff, then it turns into a nightmare. So I know Lena's not speaking, but anyway, just to wrap that point up, I've seen it from both sides. It's a mess. It's a necessary thing, though. You got to be able to do that, because sometimes, what if I accidentally fat finger and send you $1,000 instead of $100? Right? Like, I want my $900 back. But, in crypto, you can't do that unless I trust you, because there's nothing I can do cryptographically to enforce you to send me that $900 back. Like, no, you got the $1,000. You got it, right? Like, that's that.
I want to talk for a second about what's his name,
There-
Ryan Nunes.
Sorry, I just wanted to thank Karma before
Ryan.
you go on to the next person. Thank you. That helped.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, yeah.
Just I want to talk about what's his name, Ryan Nunes or Ryan Nunes or whatever. What's his real name?
Who?
The guy who was talking in the space today.
The coward.
Ron, and
Ron. Okay, I just
Simon.
why people give this clown a platform. This idiot was actually he was shilling Terra Luna, and it's not just shilling Terra Luna before collapse. When it was collapsing, the day it was collapsing, he was telling people, "Oh, buy the dip," you know. And the idiot didn't know that the algorithm for Terra Luna, while it was collapsing, it cannot go back. Like it was really well known that okay, if when it was going down, when it becomes $30 and it was going to $25, it was known. Like if you understand anything about crypto, it was known at this time is not gonna stop losing value, okay? Because the algorithm, and he was actually having tweet were asking people, oh, you can buy the dips, you can buy the dip now, and he deleted this tweet, and he came to this base and he say, oh, why don't you use Solana? Like the audacity for him to come and say, why don't you use Solana? And with all the issues that Solana has, XRP Ledger never had an issue like even close like Solana, and he comes to the space and he's still chilling Solana. Okay, I'm done. Okay, I just said what I want to say. That's it. Thank you.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just kind of we had it's whatever. I'd rather talk about more productive topics. And I guess I gathered that there's the space. I mean, they definitely wouldn't let me or Death speak up.
No, and they give him a platform. Like they give him a platform after well known that he was chilling Terra Luna, and he deleted his tweet like a coward. You know, that's what he is. He is a coward. You know, every time he does things like this, childish things, and he deletes his tweets, and still people give him a platform like he understand anything, and he doesn't know shit. Sorry, oh, I forgot. I said sorry, sir. My apologies. Sorry.
I mean, it is what it is. Like this, you know, different people, different folks, different strokes. You know, like there's people around me where I live. They believe all kinds of stuff that I think is absolutely ridiculous, but that's fine. Like I you know, what are you gonna do? It's just fine. Just move on. Do what you do, right? And just keep moving forward. I mean, I just it sounded from the information I gathered that it was not a there was maybe a lack of some factual I don't know. I don't want to say anything bad about somebody else's space, but whatever. They got a big audience, cool. I mean, I'm surprised they let Matt up. I mean, he was just in here a minute ago, but
I think that's because the XRP punks mentioned it. So once he mentioned it, they had to pretty much bring him up.
I mean, I don't know. You know, Matt does. Anyway, yeah, I'm surprised they let him up because they kept booting me, and I don't know if they were booting other people, but whatever. I mean, let them have their. It's fine. Have the conversation, and I mean, we talk about what we talk about. And there's nothing wrong with that either.
Yeah, and to be honest, okay, let me be honest here. Like, if you cannot hold your own in a bigger space like this, like 2,000 people, most of them are Bitcoin maxi. Just do not participate. Like, if you don't have the enough knowledge, like I wouldn't actually participate because I don't have the enough knowledge to actually like combating 8 people actually shouting at me at once. Okay, I wouldn't do it.
We've had a couple thousand people in these spaces before.
No, I mean, have 8 speakers that actually are Bitcoin maxi, and they just keep shouting different things, and you cannot actually refute what they say. Because I'm sorry, and with due respect to all people who participated in the other space, some people actually they are kind of new to the XRP community. I never heard them talk on behalf of XRP before, and once they got there, they couldn't actually answer anything. The only one that I thought about at this time it was Matt, but Matt wasn't there, and I was like, okay, there is.
Let's be honest, man. Just the XRP ledger itself is a little more complicated than like Bitcoin. I mean, just flat out. It's got more functionality. The whole thing is just different. There's more ways to have connections and flow and all this stuff. I mean, it just is. It's
And even in the space, just to let you know, like people were saying, like, oh, XRP has nothing, like XRP cannot do things that Bitcoin can't. You know what I mean? So that
you sent me that. I laughed.
Yeah, but no.
And you bring up a good idea. I wanted to ask a question about that.
Yeah, the conversation wasn't about XRP scam or no. It's actually they coming from perspective. Oh, we want to prove that XRP scam because it's actually kind of threat to Bitcoin, because we would hope that Bitcoin does what XRP can do, but we cannot do it. Bitcoin cannot do it, and they have to come up with the Lightning Network. And believe me, if Bitcoin has the ability to work with the banks, they would have worked with banks right now. It just can't, and that's why they don't do it, and that's why they trash banks, because basically Bitcoin can't. And if it could, they would be brazen banks now, like they brazen BlackRock now for actually partnering with Coinbase. BlackRock is working with banks, basically.
That's something David was saying also in his space later on. He was saying, people bash it, call it the banker's coin, but those very same people, when a bank announces custody of Bitcoin or for their clients and stuff, they go out streaking.
Yeah, they love to talk about decentralization, and look at the Lightning Network. What are they talking about? They celebrate decentralization.
No, so Matt taught me something in that space also, that he described the reason why XRPL payment networks are faster than Bitcoin Lightning, right? Other than the fact that you have to open up your own Lightning node, right? And then you'd have to pre-fund it, and then you'd have to have other pre-funded ones for you to even be able to use it. Bitcoin Lightning has to do something called hops. So say something, if I wanted to do long distance, like maybe from here to like Africa, right? United States to Africa, I might have a whole bunch of individual hops that might have to occur. And because of that, it takes the Bitcoin Lightning a lot longer than it actually even takes the XRP Ledger payment channels to come to consensus. And so just that by itself stumps that. But we have 3 minutes left. Cowboy, I know you just came up, man. If you'd like to speak, go ahead. If you have a question or anything you'd like to say.
Thank you guys for having me. I was just curious if you guys are in tune with the Bitcoin being put on the ISO 222 through XDC. Can anybody speak on that?
Yeah, so I'll explain this really easily in 2 different ways. So digital assets themselves can never be ISO 20022 compliant, because ISO 20022 compliant has to do with a payments messaging system
With
that
a Swift.
financial institution. Swift is one example, but it's basically just the payment information. Has nothing to do with the actual settlement or transfer of value, which would be like through the digital asset. So in the sense, could a financial institution that's ISO 20022 compliant utilize a wrapped version of Bitcoin on XDC in their settlement layer? Sure, but to be said, that could be used. We've already had IOU versions of Bitcoin since like 2013 on the XRP ledger, so there's really absolutely no difference between that or like wrap Bitcoin on Flare, or honestly even like wrap Bitcoin on Ethereum. I don't know if there's really much of a difference between all of those.
It's just a market.
Well, I guess the difference would be Ethereum is still slow, but in the sense of the other ones, like how Bitcoin has existed on the XRP ledger, we could have said the same thing, I guess, back in 2013. So
Gotcha.
I know it got blew up. I know I saw that news article because there is a certain financial institution, I guess, that is planning on using it. That's ISO 20022 compliant, but that's really what it is. It really only has to do with them using a wrapped version of it on the XDC network, if that's going to be the case. But yeah, it's misinformation if you ever say anything, any digital asset is technically compliant, ISO 20022 compliant.
Right. Yeah, I was just curious because I didn't know exactly how that process worked.
But though, thank you for coming up, man. It was great questions. It was really a great chat. I'm so happy that Matt came to chat with us, guys. I just want to thank everybody who came today. If you were a listener, we wouldn't be doing these if it wasn't for people finding this information valuable. And if you were a speaker, I really do thank you for coming up and either asking questions or providing information for us.
Just real quick, I don't mean to cut you off there, Death Ranger. Are you on TikTok? Is it possible to do any TikTok lives with any of you guys?
We're not on TikTok, but I'm sure message the ledgerscale account or me or Karma. Maybe we could do something. I don't know about a live, but if it's like a voice recording or something, I'm sure. Yeah, why not?
Okay, because I'm trying to get a big presence there because I know Twitter's obviously the spot to go, but in order to get these young kids, man, I think we need to really direct over to TikTok and to maybe pull them over and go between the two platforms.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we're spreading educational information, I'm for every single platform that you want to bring on, for sure.
Okay. All right. So I'm already following you. I'll send you a message if that's all right.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely.
Okay.
We'll
all
talk.
right. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no promises, but I definitely want to look into it for sure.
Okay.
Last minute Satoshi.eth.
How about
Welcome
white
up.
lives matters? Because everybody fucking.
All right. And that note, have a good night, everybody. I love everybody. I love you all. We will be back tomorrow, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. I may not be here, but Karma definitely will be.
Yeah. And yeah, we really do appreciate everybody showing up. If you want to donate to us for the time being, there's the crypto stuff. Should be at the top of the ledgerscale account. Outside of that, I'm slowly working on it. It's slower than I thought. And but yeah, like it's great, and that we've I hope everybody actually like gets some value out of these chats. And I know we're not doing curriculum work yet, but still, I hope that this is valuable.
Yeah, thank you, Karma. Thank you, Death. You guys are always coming through with these spaces. A lot of knowledge definitely shared. So, want to thank you guys for doing these.
Thank you very much, Tony. And listen, if anybody ever has any questions too, if they're ever wondering anything, always feel free to reach out to either one of us. We're all always available to help out.
Yeah. If there's a specific topic that you're interested in, maybe we can make it a focused chat. But you got to let us know.
Exactly.
Right? Let us know what it is that you're curious about, or like, what is it that you think you might want to have a greater understanding of, and we'll go over it. That's fine. That's awesome.
You don't want to know what I'm curious about, Carl. Anyway.
Everybody, love you guys.